How you doing? My name's David Hess. This is Ryan, or Floppy Dingus in the Discord. We've got to get that changed at some point, dog. This is Slate of Mind week 7. Are we on week 7 already, or is it 6?
Yeah, we're on week 7 of
Dude,
NFL.
week 7.
Yep.
We're almost halfway through already. That's insane. If you haven't tuned in and watched before, this is the show where we break down the chalk and focus on like roster construction and game theory on essentially how to build better rosters to compete instead of focusing so much on pivots and different plays. And so we're going to kind of just break down what we think chalk is going to be, the different ways that you could probably go based on that, and then talk about some of our favorite plays and how we'd like to play them. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this slate. It's kind of an interesting one. Last week, what went well and what didn't. Both of us had a bunch of lineups that did get ravaged by injury. Just to touch on that real quick, I don't want to speak for you, but most of my lineups didn't perform well. I did have a 1% cash and $15 entry with the Dallas stack with Dowdle, Ray McConkey, and a few other pieces. So I finished 18th. My best finish so far in a main slate this year. Feel like my constructions are pretty solid. I had good leverage. I was just missing a few pieces that didn't run out properly, including the low-owned Tennessee wide receiver. I don't know how to say his name.
Manor.
So Manor. Yep. So I grabbed a couple points from him in the late slate and had Rashid White, who did perform well. So it was a good week for me overall, just a small winner because that lineup performed well.
Yeah.
You want to touch on the pain that was last week?
As you alluded, I actually felt really good about, I played a lot of Bryce Young, who we talked about as being a fade on the show last week because we thought it'd be chalk.
Yeah.
But like he was in literally the best spot in the slate in 4,700. And so like I ended up playing like 30% Bryce Young. And Tet was terrible, but he caught 2 touchdown passes. And like I also put him with Rico Dowdle quite a lot, which was like really good. And so my stacks were actually very, very good. The problem is I had a ton of Puka and a ton of Emeka Egbuka and a ton of David Njoku. There was like 2 other guys that also got hurt. And so all said and done, like 97% of my rosters had at least
you had Marvin
injury.
Harrison Jr.
Oh, Marvin Harrison Jr., who I had 40% of. That was the first dagger. And he was going off, by the way. He had like 5 points in the first drive. All of those, we played Jacoby Brissett stacks. He was awesome. All of his receivers ended up with good fantasy days. Like Trey McBride went off. I faded McBride for Marvin Harrison Jr. in most of those stacks. It was kind of a thing where like the process was really good, and I just got caught by the bad luck injury bug that happens sometimes.
Yeah. And if you found yourself in a similar situation last week as David, it's one of those slates you have to chalk up the variance. I mean, when you have, players like Puka and Buka and those guys getting injured and Marvin Harrison Jr., there's nothing you can do.
Man, it was so crazy too because Puka got hurt like right off the rip, and I had 36% Devontae Adams. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna be amazing. I know you took such a big stand on Adams. I thought you were like, and then
I thought you were gonna be in great.
Marvin Harrison Jr. got hurt like 3 minutes later, and Devontae Adams went on to do absolutely nothing for 3 quarters.
Yeah, the Rams' offense just really stalled. They weren't producing much. It was kind of a weird game with the Ravens.
They're terrible. I'm actually curious because I think it's something we can talk about real quick to get ahead. So most fantasy sites, they judge in 3 and 4 game cycles. I don't know if you know that or not. They're mostly not long term. It's 3 and 4 game cycles that make up a lot of these. And the Ravens had a ton of injuries, like 11 defensive players injured with a lot of their secondary. And so I bet a lot of the stuff that's projecting them to be bad, now that all their players are healthy, they're like no longer bad because everybody's back. And so I don't even know if they're on the main slate or anything else, but like I think that's a really interesting.
They're not.
That sucks because I bet they'd be targeted again.
Well, the Ravens are on a bye week.
That sucks even more. It means we can't even take advantage of it in Showdown.
We're gonna take advantage of spoiler. We're gonna take advantage of it next week.
Yeah, where like I think that their defense is probably going to be pretty good actually now that everybody's healthy again. I think that's what we kind of saw is like Kyle Hamilton was back, their number 1 corner was back. They still had some like defensive linemen out and stuff and people on offense, but their secondary was like mostly back together. And so like I don't think they're pushovers anymore. I think like the projections and everything will still see them as pushovers based on when they had all those injuries, but they're coming back like relatively healthy.
Yeah. And I think something to keep an eye on too is the cluster injuries with the Chargers. I was definitely against playing the Chargers stacks last week because of all the injuries to their offensive lines. I did play Ladd and some Keenan Allen, but just keeping an eye on injuries and how those teams are, their complexion and where there's cluster injuries. And to David's point, some, small sample that's being factored in if you're looking at just a few games. I think it's valuable to look at that stuff. So this year I've been reading more injury reports than ever. I haven't looked at a ton today, but the Eagles, the Chargers, the Bucks are a few that I'm definitely going to be taking a look at as the week goes on. The Eagles defensive line and their cornerbacks, and how that's going to affect the Minnesota pass game. The Chargers offensive line and how that'll impact their offensive efficiency, and Tampa Bay pass catchers to see if Evans on his way back, what Godwin's going to do, because there could be some potential value and some of those wide receivers. So
Nice. Building off that,
anyway,
what are you looking at this week? What caught your eye first? And obviously, there's going to be the chalk that we're going to talk about, the Dallas-Washington game.
yeah,
Let's stay away from that at first, and we'll
okay,
come back and bring that in because that's the obvious part, right?
okay. Big picture, I looked at the slate and started looking into it today. There are a couple pieces of what I believe are going to be very heavily owned chalk, and some of that is really good, being Rashid Rice. And we'll talk about those pieces in particular, but there's a few mid-priced chalk players that are going to be really crucial points to the slate that we're going to have to make some decisions about. I had some early thoughts on, but the other thing that I noticed is, like, yes, Dallas and Washington has the highest game total. It's 54.5. Their implied team totals are pretty significant, but there's some really good stacks available. And I made a pretty lengthy list. So, pretty similar to other weeks, I think I'm going to have exposure to a number of different stacks. And based on that ownership, I'm going to be making some decisions about where I incorporate Rashee Rice, where I incorporate Judkins and other players. But just sort of like big picture, like if you're getting just zeroed in on, I have to play Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel with Rashee Rice, like I think there are a lot of really good stacks. And the construction this week is mid-range running back, mid-range wide receiver, expensive quarterback. So I know Caleb's also going to be getting some ownership, but he is a little bit more expensive. So I haven't really seen justification for any of the cheaper quarterbacks. They don't appear to be in good matchups this week. But what I am seeing is expensive quarterback, mid-price wide receiver with Rice. But I think if you get too zeroed in on I have to play Daniels against Cowboys, you're missing some really good other passing environments too. I don't know. That's where I'm at big picture wise, is like I was really excited about the stacks. And then there's a few decision points in the mid-range to get us started.
Got it. So what's some of the stacks you're looking at?
I mean, so it's hard to get a grasp on ownership this early in the week, but ownership sort of agnostic. I mean, I'm definitely going to still have exposure to KC, Washington, and Dallas are my three top. I think Washington and KC are going to be particularly owned. I'm not sure if people are going to play Mahomes. I'm not sure if they're going to flock more towards Daniels, but I have some other interest in Green Bay, Chicago, and New England as well, just to name a few.
I think the interesting thing with Green Bay and somebody else you just said right there. Who was the other two you said?
New England.
Green Bay,
and
New
Chicago,
England
yeah.
is that you don't know the stack partners, and so like I like them a lot in
I know.
NME, but like they kind of burn lineups outside of that. It's like, a lot. How many people played Drake May last week at 13%, but 0 people had Booty, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. That was me. I had a Drake May stack with Stephon Diggs and Hunter Henry that did nothing.
Yeah, so that's like one of those things where like I actually hate playing those teams and try to shy away from it, especially if they're chalk, right? Because it's just so hard for you to actually get the team or the wide receiver right for both of those, especially with Green Bay, where I actually think if you go back and look at it, they have like one 30-point game all year, and it was Romeo Doubs, and it took him 3 touchdowns to get it.
Yeah, and that's when he was chalk, and everyone played him in the showdown slate.
That's how it works.
And everyone just complained about Romeo Doubs chalk. Yeah, I mean it's going to be hard to play those because of the stack partners, and the target tree is hard to identify. So I'll have to talk about the application of that, but Green Bay, I think, is interesting, particularly facing the Cardinals this week that went really pass heavy with Brissett. Early week indications, it looks like Jacoby Brissett's going to be the quarterback again for the Cardinals. If they're letting rip again, that could be an environment in which Green Bay is pushed. I mean, last week we talked a lot about Green Bay being 14-point favorites. I did end up playing a Green Bay stack with Dobbs and Kraft, which didn't perform well. They weren't really pushed by Cincinnati, and their offensive efficiency wasn't that good either. So yeah, I think those are difficult stacks to play, and because I'm primarily playing 3-max and single entry, that's going to be harder. But I have a lot of interest in that environment.
Got it. So let's do one more question with you, and then I'll kick it back towards me a little bit. But
Okay.
what's your favorite way as of right now to handle the Washington-Dallas game?
So I think there's going to be ownership to the running back, Jacoby to Bill. Bill's going to have ownership. Daniels is going to have ownership.
You think so after him having 2 points last week?
Yeah, because I think everyone who faces Dallas. Well, I guess I shouldn't say everyone because Bryce Young didn't last week. I think some of that's going to be ownership dependent. I'm going to build a scenario where the running game is successful for Washington. I'm going to build lineups in which the passing game is successful. When it comes to Dallas, I want to have both fistfuls of their opponent each week, and if the field is going to cluster to one side of that versus the other, I'm going to take some stands probably where the ownership isn't. If people aren't going to play Jaden Daniels, I will absolutely have several stacks with Jaden Daniels.
Do we know yet if CeeDee Lamb is going to play?
No, he was limited in practice today. It looks like early week, they think he's going to play. James has him in the pay dirt projection. It's really weird from a pricing standpoint because CeeDee Lamb is 7,500 and Pickens is 7,300.
That's exactly what I was going to get to, is that if in those stacks that you could probably play Pickens if Lamb plays and nobody's going to play him.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to say that George Pickens is worth $200 less than CeeDee Lamb when CeeDee Lamb plays. And so, I'm not saying that it's optimal, but, I think, in those Washington stacks and stuff, if you play Pickens instead of Lamb and Ferguson, that it'll be completely unowned, just based on, pricing psychology.
Yeah, people are going to play Lamb. He's typically priced higher. And so are you thinking that's a different way that you could play Washington? Daniels with some kind of pairing from Washington and running it back with Pickens?
Yeah, so, I'm of the opinion that Washington is the best play on the slate. There's, other weeks where we talk about this that, bad offenses, can they take advantage of it? This is not a bad offense. This is, one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league.
Well,
come on. I mean, the dude's missed 2 games, and he still almost has 1,000 passing yards and 150 rushing yards this year.
Yeah, he's
now.
decent.
Would I like this more if Terry McLaurin plays? 100%. I will say, I like it a lot more. If we would deep threat, because outside of that, we have Debo, who is a terrible ADOT, but he gets a lot of targets, and then they have the occasional Luke McCaffrey bomb, but that's really not enough to rely on. And so I actually think something that's really interesting is to play Jaden Daniels with a Cowboy stack naked, betting that Jaden can get there without a single wide receiver getting there, and then playing Devontae Williams and CeeDee Lamb on the other side.
Or play Ertz. I didn't look. What's Ertz's pricing this
week?
He's
cheap, but he really hasn't seen a lot of targets. It's in the first week that McLaurin got hurt, I played a lot of Ertz, because you could get Jaden and Ertz for $10K. He had a 0, and he's gotten 3 targets a week. He just really hasn't been used in the same way. The offense doesn't really look like it did last year. Like I said, I think Debo kind of ate into what Ertz was doing last year as the security blanket.
Yeah, and the short underneath stuff.
And so, like I said, I think Debo could break a big one. He has to catch it and break it though, right? And if he does that, then he's probably optimal. But if he doesn't do that, and he might not, then Jaden could get there, I think, without any of his pass catchers getting there.
Did you miss when I said that Ertz? When he got the 0, I just wanted to. It hurts when Zach Ertz got 0.
Yeah, I did. I thought you said it hurts. So
it hurts. It hurts so bad when he got 0. So I just injected some comedy into this podcast.
And then something else that I do want to talk about is.
Sorry, Dave.
No, you're good, man. That I think Dallas is equally good on the other side. And I don't know if people will play it that way. I mean, they might. Like I said, they haven't up until this point, but Washington's defense is a legitimate dumpster fire. And if you actually if you take out the first 2 weeks of the season, when they actually held teams pretty well, like Green Bay and the Giants, really didn't do a lot offensively. Green Bay beat us up in defense, but then they're the second best matchup in the league for quarterbacks outside of Dallas. So we actually have 1 and 2 of the worst 2 defenses in the league against quarterbacks playing each other.
I know. You're gonna want a lot of exposure to that game.
Essentially, what I would say for that is you should do something 50% of your lineups account for that game being huge, and the other 50% completely fade the game. You don't touch anybody from it, and you just assume that everything blows up and sucks.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna have some Jaden stacks. I'm gonna have some Dallas stacks, And then other lineups are going to be betting that the running game is successful. And I'm going to have other lineups where they may not have one player from that game because I think the leverage you're going to get from that, because the total ownership is going to be so high on that game. If that game turns into a dud, I mean, it's a division game. Sometimes those are closer. Those opponents are familiar with themselves, and there's just variance. I mean, week to week, it's not a guarantee that they hit the over of 54.5. So I like, nothing's in absolutes, and I think we don't want to get super locked into that just being the only outcome from that game. So I think that's smart. I'm just going to add that I think playing Daniels naked with some Dallas pass catchers, if he soaks up some rushing touchdowns too, is just even. I mean, we've seen him run into in a game. I think that could be really valuable.
Yeah, I think it really depends. If he's not 15 to 20% owned this week, I might play like just 100%. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but like
It is crazy. It is a
it's
little
like one
crazy.
of those spots, like I said, where like it's not just 100% Jaden. I'd have 100% between the two of them. But it's just like one of those spots where like I think it's very few times we actually have two elite offenses with two terrible defenses that play each other and they don't get like hyper steamed. And so like if because
Yeah,
of
they're gonna have
Justin
tons of
Fields and Bryce
ownership.
Young, kind of like I feel like it potentially might have pulled people from those games a little bit because it's been two terrible quarterbacks who still had relative success, by the way. But like I said, like those two quarterbacks should have 50% of the ownership of the slate. They like should. You should be able to play anything you want outside of those two quarterbacks and like have low ownership.
So you think an efficient ownership is like 50%? You would want 50% of the stacks.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't actually play
Sorry, like you.
100%, but like I would think like
Yeah,
50% between the two of them, like 30, 20, 25, 25, something like that. Like I play roughly 60 lineups a week. I'd be incredibly okay with having 30 of those if they both quarterbacks come in sub 15%.
sub 15. Okay. I mean, right now it's hard to tell because the pay dirt projections and industry is just kind of like figuring out ownership. Um, I think I can't. I mean, he is a good quarterback. Historical ceilings, like historically, has hit ceilings before, and he's playing Dallas. I think he's going to have a lot of ownership.
He's just
So let's
expensive.
say
Like I said, the thing is
he
that
is
he's
expensive, but
expensive, and so like what I'm curious about because I think that we have another really expensive slam dunk play. And so this is something I'm really curious about because if everybody plays Jaden, I think the most interesting thing you can do is not play Jaden and play Jonathan Taylor.
pricing perspective because you would get leverage
Yeah.
off of that.
Yeah, like I said, if you don't play the two of them and they're both steamed, you can get any other quarterback at low ownership. And Jonathan Taylor carries a higher ceiling than Jaden Daniels, even in that way. And the Colts
Mm-hmm.
matchup is also really good. The Chargers' run defense has been horrific the last 2 weeks. I don't know that everyone's
Mm-hmm.
caught on to that yet. They might have. So like I think like Jonathan Taylor would be like really,
Don't
really
tell
good
anybody
pricing
then.
leverage based off of that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So let's say there's ownership. I think there's going to be a lot of ownership on that game, including the
There
quarterbacks.
should be. Like I said, like it would
Okay.
be if there isn't, something in the industry is broken.
Yeah. I mean, ownership's, the industry is a lot more efficient than it used to be. So we're going to see some ownership there. And I think your strategy of playing pass catchers from the opposing team and mixing up your correlations is interesting. I had another take on it, which if I'm playing, like let's say Washington's very popular, they're getting a lot of ownership. We know Rashee Rice is going to as well. It looks like Judkins at the running back position, and I think there was another mid-priced. Do you remember who the other one was? I'm just gonna pull up the projection.
Is it Jordan Mason?
Well, I think Bill. Yeah, it's Bill and Judkins.
That's easy, man. I'm
So
not gonna play Bill, by the way. Like as a Washington fan, I watched him fumble 2 times last week. Like, and here's the thing: the way that you should view Bill is the same way that you view Derrick Henry, but worse. Like for Bill to get there, he
because of his
needs
fumble
100
issue.
yards and 2 touchdowns. And so, like, there's like playing Bill and Jaden together, for example, is like we could probably completely fade that. I know I talk about running backs and stuff a lot, but like McNichols plays, right? It's like Nick Nichols plays. They might use Chris Rodriguez in short yardage situations after the fumble at the end of the game that costed them the game. That's all I'm saying. I
Yeah,
think like chalk Bill is like an ultra easy fade.
I would take a little bit of a different approach to that. He's priced up now at 6,100.
And he's had 2 weeks under 5 points out of 6 games.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, in trailing game states, and he's now getting the nut matchup against the Cowboys, who are giving up the third most points per game to running backs.
But you know who's giving up the first most points of games to running backs?
Bengals.
Yeah, with Jalen Warren at a similar price point that also gets pass catching volume.
He's
You
in the
know
Thursday game.
you know who's fourth on the slate? It's the Eagles with Jordan Mason, who's also in a similar place. And the Eagles suck, and no one's going to be playing him. There's just so many good options in that
Let's
price
not say
range.
the Eagles suck. The Eagles are going through a little bit of a phase right now.
The Eagles have given up 440 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games.
Yeah, like I said, it's a phase.
Sure. Like I can say the Commanders' defense suck. We can say the Eagles' defense sucks. They both suck.
They're having
On
some
top of that,
challenges.
just so you know, they've also given up 21 catches for 200 receiving yards and 2 more touchdowns to running backs. So we're talking 650 yards and 6 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks to running backs. And no one wants to play Jordan Mason.
And Justin Jefferson's going to be getting a lot of ownership.
Yeah, and so like I said, like as I understand the matchup, but like it's also just as good of a matchup to wide receivers. It's just as good of matchups to quarterbacks. And like we said, Jaden Daniels runs in the red zone a lot. Bill is terrible chalk. I'm not saying he can't get there. Like if nobody was playing him, I'd be arguing the other side. But he's terrible chalk with how that team's set up. Even Debo runs the ball.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm willing to admit perhaps my initial perspective on Bill being a good play because of the matchup might be a little bit misguided. I'm gonna look at. I do think Bill's gonna garner some ownership.
Like I said, I hope he does. That's a really easy fade for me. That would just make it really simple to not do that.
Why is Eckler in? Okay. I'm gonna look into Bill a little bit more as the week goes on.
I also have a stack that I haven't heard you talk about yet, so I don't think it's chalk. That I like a lot.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think this is the week to go back to Detroit.
Detroit's on Monday night.
Is it really?
Yeah. I was looking at Detroit and Tampa Bay, and I was like, man, this is the pivot. And
that's horrific.
Yeah, it's on Monday night, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's absolutely horrific.
Do you have any other stacks you were looking at?
I do. I don't think that they're mind-blowing, though. Kind of like where I ended up is my top 5 is Washington, Dallas, Chicago, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City.
A Thursday night. Pittsburgh on Thursday.
Wow, this slate sucks. So for reference, with anybody that watches this, usually I'm like very prepared. I wasn't prepared today. I'm a little scrambled. It's been a crazy work week. So Ryan's carrying me a little bit. I've been trying my best to like catch up in the meantime.
No, listen, dude, you always this show is more about process, I think, than exacts. And these are the conversations that David and I have that just haven't been recorded.
So I'll tell you the ugly stack then that I think you just have to think about are Pittsburgh stacks.
Pittsburgh's on Thursday again. Pittsburgh's on Thursday night against the Bengals.
How many games are on Thursday?
I just told you, just one. You brought up Pittsburgh again.
Dude,
right. I have something
because Aaron Rodgers is actually in an amazing spot, just so you understand.
I know.
And I also think T. Higgins is a really good play. So, like, I would have loved that game. Like, it's like a puke stack that, like, I would have loved to play.
I don't know if you want to take a quick look into Showdown before the end of the show, but we could touch on that if you have some strong stuff from that game. I do.
I guess I'll just add in the other stack I was looking at that I didn't love. It wasn't going to make it, but like I think Bo Nix stacks are totally playable this week. I think that like Bo Nix plus Cortland Sutton plus like Scattaboo or Wan'Dale Robinson or like whichever Giants bum that you want to take a shot on, is like totally doable because the thing with Bo Nix is that like when he doesn't have to run for his life the whole time, he's like actually relatively good. And I don't think that he'll have to run for his life the whole time in this game. And he's been like pretty bad all year. So like a lot of people won't want to play him. And it's also deflated his price.
He's a top 10 play from the pressure standpoint. Like Denver is actually 11th technically, but so he's not expected to face a lot of pressure, which is a little bit counter to what I thought with that Giants defensive line, but being the strength of their team. But the other part of that I think is in favor of perhaps playing some Denver stacks is the Giants secondary. And I'm just going to take a quick look at their fantasy points against for wide receivers and quarterbacks, just to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn. Third most two wide receivers, backs near top 20-30%. The Giants. I think there's something to that, particularly with the condensed target tree and zero ownership. So I don't think that's crazy at all.
I'll also talk about my last like really ugly stack that I hope I don't get to. But like I have
Say Arizona.
minor interest in Cam Ward stacks.
No.
So here's the thing,
Friends?
right? If you look at the thing, he's almost even when he's not pressured. Okay, he's terrible when pressured. But if you actually go back and you watch weeks 1 and 2, he was good, like legitimately good. I think Brian Callahan was a lot of the problem. And now the second part of this is that it's important that Calvin Ridley misses for this, because if Calvin Ridley's out, I think that we have a really narrow target tree where essentially it's just Chig and Alec Amanor, who are both like 3K, around 3K. And he's also really cheap. And so like it's like a 3-man stack where like you're paying 9 to 10K to play all 3 of them. And really just, I mean, if they can literally get 40 points combined, you're going to be able to play whoever else you want the rest of that stack. And so like from like a building perspective with how cheap they are and how narrow the target tree will be. And like, I think that if you go back and you look and when teams fire their head coach, teams like get really spirited right afterwards and like typically like push.
Dead cat bounce.
Yeah. And so like I said, like, I'm not saying it's a top play on the slate or anything like that, but it is something that as I was looking at all of this, like I felt like I had to bring up as like a potentially like positive roster.
So I'm going to say something in your favor, which is that the New England defense can definitely give up points. So this is not an awful matchup. This is a good matchup for them. They were also facing Las Vegas last week. That should have been a good matchup for them. And here I think is the most important point, and this is against you playing any Tennessee, is friends don't let friends play the Tennessee Titans.
So I'll tell you,
And
I felt
hold
really
on.
sure. Okay, go ahead.
Sunday morning, if you have a stack with Cam Ward in it, you're going to come in your living room, and I'm going to be sitting there with your family and friends, and we're going to read letters to you and ask you.
This
to
makes
stop
me
playing
feel like I'm going to
fantasy.
play Cam Ward this week even more.
Fight play.
Yeah. Because like if I get to do this on the show after we had this bit and he wins me $10,000, nothing in the world will make me feel better.
And I will sit here next week and eat all kinds of crow if that happens. And I will celebrate your winning. But I feel like that, although that's a non-zero chance, I feel like it's pretty close to zero.
You say that. Let me show you
on a
something.
winning lineup.
So this is something that I was looking at. Like I said, I can't say these are like super well thought out thoughts, but they are thoughts.
I don't think they're well thought out thoughts.
Let me show you something. You're going to like this. So we've done this on the show before. We don't always build lineups. We're going to build a lineup today because I want to show you guys something. I want to show you what this looks like because it's actually absolutely insane. And we talked about this last week about Joe Flacco, by the way, who I talked myself out of because Bryce Young, by the time we played, was not owned. Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase got there. So let's just for, the sake of this,
for the culture, for the pay dirt culture, let's take a look at
$4,600 Cam Ward, right?
Yep.
$4,200 Alec Amanor, and $3,300 Chig. So to play this, we are now at 8, 9, 10, 11, like 12K for a full stack. So to get a 4x multiplier, you would need 48 points between the 3 of these. If any player here hits 25, it's almost guaranteed. So after you do that, and we slap a defense in here, because this is one of the really cool weeks where I think we actually have some like pretty cheap, like playable defenses. Let's do this. We have $7,000 per player.
And what if you slap in Rashee Rice?
Yeah.
Because
so,
he's going to be Giga Chuck, and we should talk about him next, but go ahead and throw him in because you can eat the ownership anyway.
Yep. So we play Rashee Rice, and then we could also go and get what we were talking about with Jonathan Taylor.
You can have it all. This is like when they used to run through the toy store and you could just put as much in your cart
we can grab
as you
Justin
can handle.
Jefferson, and then maybe we come down just a little bit. We're 6,600. What's that put us here? There's somebody we talked about. Jordan Mason.
I'm playing a bunch of Rico Dowdle this week, most likely.
I'm going to put Judkins in here.
Okay.
And then let's say CeeDee Lamb sits out, and you also play George Pickens. And so, like, you're going to sit here and tell me that you think it's a 0% chance that Cam Ward, Alec Amanor, and Chig combine for 45 fantasy points.
No, I didn't say it was a 0 chance. I said there's a non-zero chance that this wins you, a tournament, but I'm willing to take the other side. Listen, you're making a strong case for it, and I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit. There, I just think there's almost no offensive production, and from someone who was sweating Alec Aminor receptions last week, praying that he would just
But like I
get
said, how
targeted.
much of that do
And
you feel like is attributed to Brian Callahan? Did you watch the Tennessee game?
a good portion of it, yeah,
That's the
it was
ugliest
sickening.
offense I've ever seen. Like, I don't know what that guy's
It,
doing, and it's actually really interesting because my best friend's a Titans fan, okay? So we were talking about it, and I forgot where Brian Callahan came from, and I told him that it reminded me of Zach Taylor with the Bengals. Uh,
yeah, but
because they don't run any motion, they don't do any of the modern day stuff that makes it easy for offenses and quarterbacks. They like literally just go out and say our best players are going to win. And the problem with Tennessee is they don't have any best players. They're like best players or mediocre players at best, and they don't scheme them into good usage. And then the funny thing is that Brian Callahan was Zach Taylor's offensive coordinator. And they're literally the exact same person. And so if we literally just get a shred of scheming for Cam Ward, I think that it's like doable. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, by the way. I don't know who's taking his place. I don't know what their background looks like. I have no idea. But like,
I do have a little bit of information on that. It's Mike McCoy, and from what I was learning today about Mike McCoy, he was not. I'm trying to think of how to summarize this best. What I was hearing about Mike McCoy is he runs very outdated offenses with a lot of first down running plays, run, pass, not a lot of creativity. The offenses he's been involved in included being at the Arizona Cardinals in 2018. He was the offensive coordinator for 1 year. He was the Broncos offensive coordinator for 1 year in 2017, and he was the Chargers head coach for 3 years. So I don't have a ton of information on what that looked like from there. I'm just getting secondhand reports, but
did you
there was a lot of surprise.
Did you read what he said this week though?
Tell me what he said.
He said on the press conference, players and not plays have to guide the direction the team takes, which is why the offense will be guided by a couple of simple questions that center on the quarterback. What does Cam do best? And what do we do best as an offense? We have to look at our scheme and what we're doing, and is it going to change from week to week? And so if this guy has leveled up in the meantime, which I think if you really want to look at that, I'd look at like what teams he's been on recently and like who he's been around. I don't think it's crazy to think that like, think about this. Like Trevor Lawrence looked way better with Mike McCoy than he looked with that Ohio State coach, whoever that guy was. I forget.
Urban Meyer.
Yeah. So again, like I said, I'm really not like dying on that hill, but with the chalk and like I mean, I'll probably play a little bit at a spike, like I said, like 5%. That's 2 lineups. I don't feel like I need a lot of that to maybe get that right.
I don't think that's unreasonable. At home, dead cat bounce against a bad defense in New England. I'm like, I know I'm pushing back on that, but it's makes sense to me.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not saying it's the best play on the slate.
I'm probably gonna play one with you now.
But like I said, if we really get to the point where we think like Justin Jefferson, Jonathan Taylor, there's another expensive running back like Devin Achane that makes sense or something like that, and you're looking for ways to play them all, I think it makes sense. That's all.
Why don't we move to talking about Rashee Rice?
Yeah, I think you just play him.
Yeah, I think you play a lot of them. Is he $2,000 underpriced?
3 maybe.
For what his role was? Maybe 3?
Like, he could be an AK wide receiver, I think, in 2 weeks. It's kind of like the Emeka Egbuka conversation in week 1. Where, like, I ended up fading Emeka Egbuka, by the way, which is a terrible idea. I argued with James why you shouldn't do that, and then I did it. You just play him, and you eat the chalk and get different elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what I'm going to do as well. I mean, he's going to project great everywhere. He projects like a monster on Pater. I'm just bringing it up. I don't think this is, like, an issue to, share this projection. Everyone's going to have a giga projection on him. Yeah, is a 17-point median with a 35-point ceiling at 5,600. He is the best play at wide receiver by a pretty good margin. Harold Fannin, who's also going to be chalk, is if
Rashee Rice isn't 50% owned, he's underowned.
He's underowned. Yeah. I think 50 sounds like a good target. I think the times that I won't have him are going to be really heavily owned constructions, probably from Dallas and Washington. Like, there's ways that There's ways that Rice fails and doesn't hit the ceiling that you need for the optimal.
What do you feel like those would be?
A game where Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelsey get the majority of the target share because Rashee Rice is a little rusty. It's a game where potentially the Raiders don't push the Chiefs because they're 12-point favorites right now, and they just slug the ball with Kareem Hunt. It's not like the Chiefs have always dominated their opponents. They'll sometimes just slow the game down and like eat clock by running those plays. Anyway, I think it's a thin case for him not making value. I think he'll be in the optimal this week, but just if you're gonna have a bunch of ownership in your lineup, there might be some lineups that you create a construction without him. I'm not going to have 100% of them.
That if you're building without him, you have to do one of two things. One of three things. I think that you should go even cheaper at wide receiver, to where you can have better running backs than the people that are playing him. I think that you play two expensive wide receivers so that if they have a ceiling game, Rashee Rice might not top it, or you should play another Chiefs player and hope that they score the touchdowns. And because this is one of those points where the leverage matters, and I don't think it's enough just not to do it. I think that you should actively leverage the situation in some way. I don't think it's do you play him or not to play him. It's when you don't play him, what do you do to generate leverage?
Yeah, I think that's interesting.
That's why I asked you the ways that you thought he could fail, because I think it matters, right? If you think that Travis Kelsey catches 2 touchdowns on your non-Rice lineups, you should play some Travis Kelsey.
I am going to play some Travis Kelsey. And sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. And just like I said, I think the other big part of that is, when I'm looking at this slate, I think that we have some interesting wide receivers that could have ceiling games, especially if Lamb plays. So, I don't hate the idea of not playing Rashee Rice and playing CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson on the same lineups together.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Cool. Well, let's wrap this up.
I got one more thing.
Okay.
I got one more thing. So I don't always take strong stands on players this early in the week, but because people are, concentrating around some of the mid-priced running backs I did want to touch on, I was really interested to see what Dowdle's price was going to be this week and how he was going to project and if people were going to play him and if I wanted to play him. I mean, he's had some historic weeks of usage the last week. I mean, the last 2 weeks, he's been a monster. I don't need to read his stat lines. Everyone knows he dominated. So he's 6,800 this week. And I looked early at pay dirt projections for him, and he's very weak projection-wise. I don't know if that's strong on historicals for him. I don't know if it's the matchup with the Jets. But I looked a little bit deeper at the matchup with the Jets because I was like, well, is he facing a really stalwart run defense in the Jets? That doesn't feel like what I've seen, but let me see what data suggests. And it looked to me like if you just took the whole season as a whole, I think the Jets were towards the bottom in giving up points, middle to about 50% for giving up points to running backs. But I also looked through what some of those individual performances were. And, I don't know if I can draw direct conclusion from it, but the Jets offense obviously is poor. The Carolina offense is running the ball at a really high rate, and their efficiency and their efficacy with Dowdle is really high. Going back, you look back at what the Jets have done against the run game, and you look back 1 week and you see the Broncos did very little last week. Their main running back, Dobbins, had 14 carries for 40 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. But some of the other performances this year against them, Javonte Williams, 6 for 135, 8.5 yards per carry. Evan A. Chain had 5 yards per carry for 100 yards. James Cook had 21 carries for 132 yards and 6.3 yards per carry. I wanted to see where Dowdle would stack up if we looked at rushing efficiency this year and yards his average. I don't know what the best question is here to ask, but I'll just say it. I looked up the regular season rushing stats, and the only player to average, he actually averages the exact same yards per carry is Bijan Robinson right now. Now I know that's a small sample, but it's 5.8 yards per carry. And they're running a ball, an absolute ton. The other stats are good. Rush percentage over expectation, rush yards over expected. You've seen it. He's being dominant, and I think that Jets defense could get smoked. So for 6,800 and he's going to put up another 30 points, I think that's a really sharp play this week too.
So I think the reason his ownership is so low and he projects bad because Chuba Hubbard's back.
Dude.
And so it's kind of a
I don't
thing
think
where if you think that he's taken a job since then,
I do.
then
Yeah.
like you could still go there. But like if he gets even just 15 to 20% less carries, what does that look like at 6,800?
Is Chuba in the projections for pay dirt?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at projections, but they were saying last week that he almost suited up. So like I think that people were expecting him to be back. And they were also answering questions after the game about who was going to start when he comes back. And there was uncertainty.
Okay.
But I do have a funny playback after all that. I was going to let you finish before. I didn't want to cut you off. I felt like you put a lot of work in that.
I did put some work into it. I just was like, I don't understand this projection. If people aren't going to play this guy, I'm really interested. I mean, I don't want to be a victim of confirmation bias either. I think there's obviously ways that could fail, and you just help explain the primary one, that he might be giving up a lot of his workload. But
I think
go
for
ahead
what
with
it's
what
worth,
you
I
were
think
gonna
it
say.
ends up a 1A, 1B, but at 6,800, that's rough, especially because he doesn't break big plays. He's actually like a consistent grinder that like gets there with volume.
Yeah. No, if Chuba's playing, that's a concern.
But my really funny
Chuba
play
is in the projections.
that I hope that doesn't steam, but it might, but I like a lot is Mason Taylor in the same game.
Yeah.
With Garrett Wilson out this week, Mason Taylor is already like wide receiver 2 or pass catcher 2 in that team, and Carolina sucks against tight ends, and Mason Taylor's like really cheap. It feels kind of like a good Mason Taylor week, although like I hate playing anybody attached to Justin Fields. But with that said, I even like Justin Fields, Breece Hall, and Mason Taylor again. Like I said, the thing of it is like, does Justin Fields suck? Yes. Will Justin Fields run 15 times a game? So like you're getting 15. Like imagine how much is Justin Fields this week?
He's not expensive. He's in the fives.
Okay, so if I told you that you had a $5,500 running back and he was going to get 15 carries and he was also going to throw 15 passes, how do you feel about that?
I think that's something I would be interested in.
Yeah, and so like I understand that like Justin Fields is a shitty quarterback. He is for sure. But like the reason he consistently
5,700.
has huge fantasy games isn't because he's a good quarterback and you don't need him to be a good quarterback. It's because he runs all the time. And so like because Mason Taylor is so cheap, I think like you can put Fields and him together and like you really just need Mason Taylor to get like 13 and Justin Fields to run a touchdown in, and all of a sudden he's 29 fantasy points again, and he's the best player on the slate. And so, like, when we don't have a ton of smash spots and we're considering all these, like, yucky, like, doesn't feel good stacks, like, I almost feel like I just rather bank on Justin Fields' 15 carries.
Yeah, I agree. I think Fields with Taylor is an interesting play. You don't need to play Hall with him. You don't need to share that rushing equity for the price that they're at. But I do think the other thing is Carolina is the second worst team at giving up points to tight ends. Garrett Wilson isn't there to what you said. I think that's really smart. That could be the actual sharp pivot off of playing Cam Ward.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think when you start having these thoughts, like I'm not coming away from Cam Ward or anything, but like in this show, we've talked about Pittsburgh stacks that we were excited to play. I know they're not on the slate, but like Pittsburgh and Tennessee and Bo Nix and there's just a lot of ugly. And so like when you look at all that stuff, I mean, are we gonna sit here and say that any of those are like good quarterbacks at this state? It's like, and they're not gonna run 15 to 20 times a game. And so like if no one's gonna play Justin Fields again, like I will happily play Justin Fields and like I said, and be happy about it. Who I'm not going to play this week is Ted. I will have 0 Ted. The fact he's up to 6,400, he hasn't broke 14 fantasy points yet. Like I have no idea why he keeps rising in price. He's been terrible.
I played the Cowboys last week, yeah.
And he still had 16 and it took 2 touchdowns.
It's because he's projecting well and the volume's there. And if all of those targets, although they have a small A dot and they resulted in 2 touchdowns, if he garners ownership this week, it's Rico Dowdle season.
He won't. No one's going to play Tet. No one wanted to play Tet last week.
Yeah.
No one wanted to play Tet in the
Um,
nut matchup. They're definitely not going to play him this week. But
yeah.
yeah, I think Jets are interesting. Like I said, like I don't have anything I'm committing to hardcore. I think what I will say outside of Washington Dallas stacks, my next highest one is going to be probably Patrick Mahomes because I think that's actually the best way to
So
leverage Rashi Rice is just to pair him with Patrick Mahomes that nobody wants to play.
you don't think he's gonna garner
No,
ownership? Okay, then
because like no one expects that game to
I was
shoot out,
wondering.
so like no one's gonna
Right.
play it because Mahomes is expensive and the game environment sucks. And so like I like the skinny stack because I don't think the game's gonna blow up either, right? But like I'm just betting that if Rashi Rice goes 100 yards and a touchdown or two, that like Patrick Mahomes can find it in him to throw 302. And I think that you could come
They have
back with
almost
like
two
Trey
implied
Tucker and
touchdowns.
just hope for a big play. You could play Jack Beck. Jack Beck is he's a second round pick or third round pick this year that like really hasn't played, but he played a lot of snaps last week. So like that might be like some kind of sharp thing you could throw in. Not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm just looking for like cheap plays that you don't need a lot for it to take off. Um, and then yeah, so Patrick Mahomes will probably be my third highest, and then like I said, I'll have like a small collection of a bunch of really ugly puke stacks. Probably led by Justin Fields and Cam Ward that I'm just hoping for the best.
Can I throw a puke stack in there?
100%.
All right, Jacoby Brissett. With Marvin Harrison out, it's going to probably be less efficient, but he managed to keep the game close with the Colts. With the targets that he had, I think it's a little bit tough to identify the stacking partner. I mean, McBride's
It's
pretty
Trey
obvious.
McBride for sure. I've just had a
Yeah, I
strong
mean that's that's sub 10,000 for that stack,
since
and they're
watching the
passing
Green
a
Bay
lot.
game with Washington, man. I just decided I was never playing anybody against Green Bay ever again. Like that's the scariest defense I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, but to your point, which you used against me, was that Joe Flacco and Jamar Chase did get there last week, even in junk time, and
But like it took
so
crazy Jamar Chase, and Trey McBride is just not Jamar Chase. I'll tell you somebody I was really excited to play. Again, if someone's not on the slate, was Mac Jones stacks. That was
who are
another
they
one that I was
playing?
looking at that I was like kind of excited about. CJ Stroud.
Oh no, no! You don't want to play them against Atlanta.
Why not?
Atlanta's pass rush is back. Their star pass rusher. Their defense is looking good. I guess they're going on the road, but I'm looking at under in that game.
Yeah, well, predicted
Sorry, go
pressure
ahead.
doesn't agree with you in any way. Um,
Yeah, but if they're taking a sample from a couple games, they're not accounting. I gotta find what that guy's name is. But their pass rush is much different with him in the game.
yeah, and then the
Go ahead,
last
though.
thing that I will talk about that I think is interesting, and then I've talked about everything that I think is even remotely interesting is Carson Wentz stacks.
Yeah, I thought that might come up today.
Yeah, I think you can play Carson Wentz, Justin Jefferson, maybe throw in Jordan Mason even. Um, Again, like
Yeah.
there's not a lot outside of Washington and Dallas that I'm like confident in, but there are a lot of things that I think make sense if you let it. Um, But yeah, so that's like kind of where I'm at with everything. I think you can really play whoever you want. Like if I talk about just playable players this week, like Caleb Williams, good. Patrick Mahomes, good. Spencer Rattler is probably playable. His defense is terrible. Jordan Love, definitely playable. Jaden Daniels, potentially the best player on the slate. Bryce Young, bridge to below average. Bo Nix in a good spot. Drake May in a good spot. Justin Fields in a good spot. Daniel Jones in a fine spot. Justin Herbert, not really. Dak, great spot. Cam Ward, playable, which is crazy. Just thinking about it.
That's debatable, but
Like I said, the fact that he's even in the debate as the worst quarterback in the NFL just goes to show you that it's doable.
yeah, I came away with the same thing though. I was like, you don't have to play all of Dallas and Washington. Like there is a lot of really good plays this week.
But they're not really good. Like Tua's in a good spot again. But like, do I want to play Tua? Like, do I hate myself enough to play
not in
Tua
a good
this week?
spot. No, don't. No, Tua's not in a good.
Tua's
spot
in a
this
great
week.
spot.
I
Tua's in an
real
actually
quick.
really, really great spot. So again, we have a really condensed target tree with Darren Waller and Jalen Waddle and Devin Achane, and they're the only people that's going to get anything. Tua is good against the blitz. He's always been good against the blitz. And so
What about pressure without the blitz? What about Myles Garrett in his space?
yeah, I mean, if you look at the pressure charts, he's got a .347 EPA when it's clean, and he's still negative .079, which is like acceptable even under the blitz. It's like they're going to be blitzed a lot, but he's like acceptable. And the important thing to remember is when you talk about blitzed a lot, we're still talking about 24%. So on 75% of his dropbacks, he's going to be unblitzed and like or unpressured, and like he's surgical in that way. And it's like I said, it's a really thin target tree. Nobody will probably play Jalen Waddle. He's went off 2 weeks in a row. Darren Waller has a good matchup for tight ends there, and then Devin Achane just went absolutely bananas last week, and he's still probably gonna be unplayed because he's expensive. And so like our Miami stacks, good plays, absolutely. Do I want to play them? No.
And you run it back with the chalk from Harold Fannin to add to lower your volatility and find a unique way to play him as well because he's projecting like a monster.
I don't feel like I want to play Harold
I mean,
Fannin, man. I watched that Dylan Gabriel game last week because I played so much David Njoku, and like I never want I don't want to play anybody on that team. But I would play Judkins.
that's how I ended up with the Titans. You can tell there's some recency bias from me sweating Amanor and you sweating Njoku and just being like, never again. Just give us a week, and when we come back, I'll be trying to argue for Titan stacks, and you'll be trying to argue for
But
Brown
I do
stacks,
think it's a unique way to play Judkins, who I do want to play again. I played Judkins last week too, by the way, a lot of him, and he sucked. But I've talked about numerous times where he was like a play of the slate because he's a really good running back. And so, like, I do think it's a way to play Judkins in a different way that people aren't going to play him. So yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like the biggest question is going to be for everybody on the slate is what do you do with Washington and Dallas? And if you don't play them, who is going to beat them?
Patrick Mahomes.
That's my best bet.
I think it's the best bet, but I think there's other options for sure. And I think you did a good job at outlining a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wide open, man. It's like one of those things where like it's a lot easier to NME than to 3-max this week. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I think the summary though is that we're going to be eating a lot of rice. We think that's good chalk, and there's a lot of different ways to build though. And we talked through some of our early thoughts about what those are going to be. So it was a good slate of mine.
Yeah. I mean, my wrap thoughts is that Washington's good chalk, Rice is good chalk, lots of good running back chalk. It's like not a week to get crazy. I would just like pick one piece of the chalk that you think could fail and figure out how to leverage it and build directly for that. It's like I would be building the lineups, each lineup to directly leverage one of the chalk situations that you're not playing on that roster.
And that's why I'm hand building right now. Is I'm going in and creating lineups based on those different constructions. So if this passing attack fails, who is going to succeed from it? Or just having some thought about the construction, just giving me a little bit more control over it. Now you can do that with an optimizer too, but that's really like
you've seen them. I have 78 rules a week.
No, I know. You use a ton of rules, and recently I've been hand building and just really enjoying that process. But thinking through that too, how can I get direct leverage? If I'm not playing Rice in a lineup, do I want Worthy, Kelsey, or a different way to approach that? So
cool, man. Sounds good. Well, appreciate you talking football with me on a Wednesday again. Good luck this week. Hopefully we don't get beat by the injury bug. Hopefully, all of our good strategy sessions and hours of going to building don't get ruined by bad luck and variance. And I'll see you next week, man.
Yeah, see you next week. Thanks, David.